What's up, everybody, and welcome back for another episode of the Fancast Live podcast. As you guys can see, my boy, Jamie Hollywood Barrett, is back with me once again. We're going to talk some New York Giants football because obviously the New York Giants are back in the fucking postseason. Jamie, Merry fucking New Year to you, bro. How you been?
I'm doing pleasure to be on. Quick shout out to my Georgia Dogs.
Yeah, baby.
Back-to-back champs. Rangers on a nice roll, but we're talking about our G-Men today. Great to see you, brother.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, bro. Thank you for coming on. And the Giants are back in the postseason for the first time since when?
I think it's 2015.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
The boat
2016
trip.
was the last time. That was. Didn't they get eliminated by the Green Bay Packers in that?
Yeah.
Yes, they
The
did.
that was boat trip game.
Yeah. Odell Beckham Jr. Fucking A.
Yeah.
Brings back a lot of memories. But, the Giants are back in the postseason for the first time since 2016. It is tremendously great. It's a great feeling for me. I know it is also for you and many Giants fans out there that they're back in the postseason. They're doing this under first-year GM Joe Shane, first-year head coach Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, offensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, the defensive coordinator. They're doing this with a roster that's filled with a bunch of second stringers, third stringers. I mean, this roster is not built to be a playoff contender, a playoff team by any means, but with the leadership of Brian Dable, that of Wink Martindale and Mike Kafka, they have really gotten the best out of the players on this roster. And it has shown with locking up that number 6 seed back in Week 17 against the Indianapolis Colts when they beat them in convincing fashion, 38-10, a game they needed to win to clinch. Otherwise, it would have taken a win against Philadelphia in the last game of the season in Week 18 in order to clinch a playoff spot. What are your thoughts on what the Giants have done so far? And how are you feeling about the Giants getting in the postseason for the first time in 6 years?
Feeling, we as fans, we care about the team. It kind of dictates how the rest of the week goes. If, Rams get a big win, they're feeling good the beginning of the next week. Where we really take it. So it's good to see that we have coaching staff and a GM on the same page. I think I really credit Mara and Tish for kind of, taking a step back. The way that we're trying to do it, it's not 2011. Can't do the same over and over again, expect the same result. So they brought in two guys that knew the type of personnel that they want. Little cap space they have. Richie James was a guy that did special teams and punts over at San Francisco, around a little bit. Guy, he'll drop some passes, but he was a great fit. They pick up Isaiah. You get the most out of Derek Eaton as he kind of gets through the playbook, and they get rid of Kadarius Toney, which he's a first-round pick and he's a lot of talent, but it's to know that they see things before it happens. They're proactive instead of reactive. So I really love this group, the staff. They did the most little. Just proud of the effort that these guys are showing. And I'll leave this to you here. I mean, what can you say about the two questions going into the year? Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley.
We know it.
They have answered the bell.
Yep, absolutely.
And
in a big way, too, because both players had tremendous seasons. Both players have stayed healthy throughout the course of the season. You can't say anything bad about either one of these players. These two players, everybody was thrown under the bus. Nobody wanted Daniel Jones. I mean, we had a mix of Giants fans who wanted him, who didn't want him. They didn't think he was the future. They thought he was the future. Now we think he's the future. Now let's see what he does in the playoffs. And then, that discussion will probably start again. Saquon Barkley, obviously one of the best running backs in the league. The big discussion was, should we have taken him number 2? Is he worth the money that we're going to spend on him? Is he worth the extension? So many questions, but these two have answered in big ways this season. Listen, Daniel Jones may not be, Patrick Mahomes because his numbers are maybe are a sample size of those of Patrick Mahomes. But the fact of the matter is He doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes in this system with Brian Dable and Mike Kafka. He has to be Daniel Jones. He has shown that, especially in the last 3 to 4 weeks, and you may or may not agree with me, he has shown that he has gone through his progressions a lot better than he was in the beginning of the season, and he is. And I feel like the Giants have gone to the pass a lot more in the last 3 games of the season, as opposed to the first half of the season. And Daniel Jones has really shown that Brian Dable can trust him in dropping back and throwing the ball and finding his receivers, going through his progressions and everything, and making the play. And if he doesn't have a play, he uses his legs to take off and go run down the field and make something big happen. And that's the thing about Daniel Jones that a lot of people, a lot of Giants fans appreciate, as opposed to those who don't. He's not going to throw 40 touchdowns a season. He's just not that type. And right now we just don't have the talent on offense for him to throw even 30 touchdowns a year. Listen, he's thrown 15, 16 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's run for 7 more. He's got 22 total. That's not too shabby, man. He's got over 700 yards rushing. He's already beaten his career high. And as far as Saquon Barkley is concerned, I think he beat his rookie season total in yards. Did. He's having a tremendous year. Yeah, he took a dip later on in the season. He had that shoulder injury that he really didn't want to talk too much about. And then he took the week off, and he's going to be fresh to go against Minnesota this weekend, this Sunday, a 4:25 start in Minneapolis. I mean, I am tremendously excited about this game. I'm tremendously excited mostly for Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, but let's also talk about the fact that Joe Shane drafted how many players did we draft this year? 7 or 8?
Yeah.
How many of those got significant amount of playing time this year? We could start naming them off right off the bat.
And Wandale, we haven't even gotten to see him, what he could really do. Wandale was good when he came in, but you talk about, Kayvon Thibodeau, he was preseason defensive player, impact player, was getting closer, but I think as his MCL, as his injury got better and he got to it, he was an absolute beast. When you talk about that pivotal game, and this pivotal game this year was the Washington Commanders game on the road, going into Washington, you got to have it. What do we see? We see Kayvon Thibodeau he's made 2 of the defensive plays of the years. He ended Lamar Jackson in that game. We took advantage there, and then the game, Strack, fumble, scoop, score. I mean, he was an absolute nightmare to play against. He's heard enough about Washington's defensive line. And then the final drive, we needed a play. Barkley, 10 yards. Barkley, 11 yards. Barkley, he was doing that spin move. Dude, he said, I will not be denied. I got this. And that's what about this team is we got dogs on this want to win. They can feel it, and they're not going to let the opportunity go. And you talked about Daniel Jones, those numbers of Patrick Mahomes. But when it counts in the clutch, how many times in London against the Packers, the Ravens game, how many games where he took his team, and even against the Vikings, nobody thinks against the Vikings, all right, you're on the road, okay, that was nice. They come at the end of the game, runs for a first down, finds the third-string receiver, and then the 2-point conversion, a perfect touch throw to a 4th-round road to get a 2-point. I'm just so appreciative of this group and just for how they fight for this coach. And it just shows how great this coaching staff is and what they're getting out of them.
Just by the way the season started this year against Tennessee, you remember the end of that game? Going for 2 to win the game. Forget going for the tie. He wanted to win the game. He wanted to put an exclamation point on that game right then and there. He did not want to kick that field goal, that extra point to tie the game and possibly go into overtime where you could possibly lose the game. No, he was playing that game to win the fucking game. And that's where it all started with that game against Tennessee, with that call on the 2-point conversion. It really riled up the the players,
Yeah.
and they put a lot of trust in Dable in, wanting to play to win the game instead of wanting to play to lose the game. Something
Right.
we learned with Joe Judge in 2 years that he was here in New York.
He knew. I think he knew with the roster they had, being in that position. You don't want to be in Week 16 when the playoffs are over to go for it. You're on the road at Tennessee. The Giants fans are in the stands. It's just and Saquon Barkley, who is trying to prove himself to get a new contract, giving him the ball, letting him get in there. I mean, that set the tone for the year. Think about this. The last game the Giants played in the last season, they took a knee on third down to give extra room for a punter. The very next game, the next season, they go for it to win the game with a 2-point conversion. That's the difference.
Yep.
The differences of the 2 years and the two regimes can be those bookend games. The end of last year and this one couldn't be any different.
I tell you that for a short while, Joe Judge really had me convinced that he was the next best coach for the New York Giants, and here we are, a year later, and we're praising Brian Dable for the leadership that he's shown for this New York Giants team, and how bad Joe Judge really was, and we never really saw it until the very end. But listen, the Giants started off pretty good against in that Tennessee game. They go 2-0. Then they lose to Dallas. They go 2-1. We were like, here we go. Because me and you, we predicted some low numbers as far as wins are concerned. I think I predicted 4. I think you predicted 6.
Yep.
And I was like, oh shit, here we go. We lose against the Cowboys, and it wasn't a convincing loss because they lose by 7. So it wasn't a blowout that I was expecting.
No.
But yet they lost. They come back the following week and they beat the Bears. They go 3-1. Then they beat the Green Bay Packers in London by 5. We never expected that.
Nope.
But Daniel Jones led the way with Saquon Barkley, win the game. And then the following week, we're like, oh shit, we got the Baltimore Ravens. And yet we go and we beat the Baltimore Ravens.
Yep. Wink Martindale might have known a couple of tendencies of Lamar Jackson, made him a little uncomfortable. And, dude, that was the Kayvon Thibodeau arriving. I think that his injury bothered him a lot, and I know it was like a slow start, but he's a freak. He reminds his performance, just going fast forward in a little bit here to the Washington game, that reminded me of Jason Pierre-Paul. That is the most dominant. I mean, obviously Strahan and OC had big games, but since JPP, that was the most dominant defensive end game. And don't sleep on Azeez Ojulari because he's more of a quiet guy. He's been a beast too. Yeah. And we're getting him back too for next week. So let's keep going through the season because
no doubt. So they beat Baltimore. Then they go to Jacksonville. And they beat Jacksonville, and then we hit a rough patch. We lose to Seattle, 2 touchdowns. And we get the bye week. We come back from the bye week. We beat the Texans, 24-16.
Not the best game against the Texans either.
It definitely wasn't, but it was a win in itself. Right. And then, the 31-18 loss to the Detroit Lions at home, that was not expected. We really thought that we would be able to beat the Detroit Lions, even though the Detroit Lions were on a pretty good hot streak at that point.
They should be in the playoffs. They should be. They deserve to be. They were 1-6.
Well, they beat Green Bay. They beat Green Bay, they needed some help, but they didn't get the help they needed. So after losing to Detroit, we lose to the Cowboys again. Once again, a one-possession game, 28-20. So I would have thought we would have gotten blown out. And then there was that tie against the Commanders. Now, say what you want. I think the Rangers, the Rangers just scored.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
I'm watching the damn.
Foxy. Yeah.
So they tie the Washington Commanders. Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
It's a game that I thought we could have easily won. I think the Giants should have easily won that game, but they allowed the Washington Commanders to stay in that game. It finishes in a tie. Okay, whatever. Let's just keep going, and then they get blown out by the Eagles. I mean, that loss to the Eagles.
That was a gut punch.
Well, granted, We're missing a lot of players to injury.
We did.
We got our asses kicked, and I mean the Eagles really showed the New York Giants they truly are the number one seed at that point, at that moment. Then we have the Commanders once again, and we beat them.
We had to.
We had to exactly. I was just going with that. You had to win that. They had to win that game, and they did, because that knocked the Commanders one game back and out of the playoff picture for the moment. Then they lose to the Vikings in that 3-point game, that 61-yard field goal with time expiring, a game that many of us felt the Giants could have easily come back and won. It was probably one of Daniel Jones's best games of the year,
I agree.
I think.
Yep.
I think that game and the game against the Indianapolis Colts were his probably the two best games of the season for him, stats wise. But they lose that game against Minnesota. Okay, fine. We need to go home and beat Indianapolis to get ourselves in the postseason. That is all we need to do, and they did it in convincing fashion with a 38-10 win against Indianapolis, and they just kicked their fucking ass all over the field. I mean, if the Giants, exactly. If the Giants needed to make a statement, they needed to make that statement against the Colts, against a team that's inferior to them, and they did it still with a lot of players sitting out, and they whooped their fucking ass. And we didn't have to worry about the Eagles in the last game of the season. Although I don't know if you agree or disagree with what Brian Daboll did by sitting his starters. I would have preferred had he started them. This is just me. I'm just saying, but I'm being selfish here. And the reason why is because I really fucking wanted to beat the Eagles so bad to knock them out of the NFC East title and to knock them out of that number one seed. But quite frankly, when I really, the more I thought about it, I'm like, it's not necessary. It's not necessary. We really don't need to beat the Eagles in the last game of the season to prove anything other than just knocking them out and, being satisfied with the fact that we knocked them out of the number one seed and the division title. But from what I just went through, what are some of the highlights that you remember most that stand out to you out of all the games in the season?
So we touched on earlier about that pivotal Washington game, just a total character win, especially Saquon with those 3 consecutive runs, just took over the season trajectory right there on that drive. The gut punch loss to the Eagles, was at home. I think it's something that, you don't want to, say that's a great loss. It was a bad loss, but I think for a team, when you want to have future success, you're going to go through a growing pain. Instead of going through 4 growing pain losses, we went through a 1 bad growing pain loss. Listen, this is the elite of the elite. Their game plan just out-schemed us, and Jalen was doing whatever he wanted. We didn't have our pass rushers fully healthy. McKinney was fresh out that injury off the bye week. It took us a while to adjust to him being out. We let up some bigger pass plays down the field, but it gave a lot of these younger rotation guys an opportunity to play and say, you know what, we got beat. We're going to go to practice, and you know what, this was the bottom 4 part of the season, and you appreciate Daboll staying consistent, not too high after a win, not too low after a loss. And they had to go back, and you had to play, a really tough opponent in the next week as well. So, the Minnesota game as well reminded me, the Patriot 2007 game, that was different. But that Viking defeat, a 61-yarder, I mean, you had him, and you had nobody to throw the ball to. And you're going up against the best receiver in football without your 2 best in the secondary. And the Giants had them. They have a formula that they know they can use to win. Running the football, Jones was running where he wanted. And I'm telling you right now, if we have Adoree Jackson is coming back, McKinney is going to be back, our guys are going to be back. We are going to be a live favorite in the game coming up. We'll get there. So I love the energy and the determination of the Giants against Minnesota. And I think Daboll must have had a great message, because Indianapolis was leave no doubt. What you didn't want to see was a nip-tuck game like it's been all year, late field goal, late touchdown. Giants said, you know what? Fuck this. Enough of this. We're getting in. And Daniel Jones getting that recognition from the fans is so big because rightly or wrongly, he's been of a lot of criticism and his turnovers have been a problem. But the first game he had a turnover, Dable sat him down, got in his ear. But since then, he's been very responsible for the most part with the football. And in that Minnesota game, he overcame an interception too, and he still went down the field. So the character building, the winning culture, I think from the Philly loss, getting past that, using the Minnesota loss to just go in and take care of business convincingly, Landon Collins making a pick six, Thibodeau making plays, although the Foles thing, I'd like to not see that too much. But it was just a great way to end the year. And then going into Philly, Dable played it the right way. Because the Giants do not have the depth like the Alabamas and the Georgia colleges where, all right, a 5-star gets hurt, you bring in another 5-star. In the NFL, it doesn't work that way. The Giants are too thin at O-line. Defensive line, they're pretty stout, but like especially secondary running, they need their guys, and especially quarterback. I mean, the Giants having any chance of success, you can't take any risks, and they want to earn their time and earn their checks, especially for their next contracts. Philadelphia's got everything to play for. We don't. What you don't want to do is have your starters in playing a little tentative. I'm not going to hit the hole too hard. I'm not going to cut, because that's how people actually get hurt worse, is if you're actually not going full throttle and you're trying to take it easy. So I give props to him for taking care of his players. And I also got to give props to the second stringers who balled their asses off. And the message is the same. It doesn't matter who's in. We're playing the game plan. We're going to execute. And the Giants, they were in this game. They were only one score out. In the second half, they came on. So I think the whole way that he handled it was great. I think a guy like Barkley, with the nagging injuries he's been playing through, needed the extra week. You don't want to play a cold Philly night and just tweak something. You just don't need to do that. So I thought he handled it well. Proud of the group. And it's what a great season. 9-7-1. I'm happy with it. You're in the playoffs.
No doubt.
You're
the offense came in at 16th overall in 2022.
Last year it had to be worse, right?
I believe so. They were 26th overall in passing and 4th overall in rushing. So obviously when you look at the number and you see, well, they're ranked 26th in passing.
Well, who do they got? Dude, you got Richie James, Isaiah Hodgins.
I had Vikings fans trolling me on fucking Twitter, and they're talking about, oh, you guys got the worst offense, you guys got the worst receivers.
So
what? But look, you have the probably top 3 receivers in the league.
Yeah.
And Jefferson, Thielen, and that other dude that had a fucking
KJ Osborne's good.
Yeah.
You got Hawkinson, who is a first-round pick from Detroit, who's a stud. So and Dalvin Cook. What's your excuse?
And yet you could only beat the Giants, who were missing 7 of their defensive players, by 3 points, and you only won because of a fucking 61-yard field goal that shouldn't have went in, but it did.
Yeah, and you're at home, so
exactly.
What's the excuse? Exactly.
And the fact of the matter is I don't care what anybody says. The Minnesota Vikings record is it doesn't say how good or how bad they are. I don't think they're as good as their record says.
Yeah, they're not.
That's my opinion. Others can say, well, Kirk Cousins. Yeah, okay, Kirk Cousins threw for 30-something touchdowns. Big fucking deal. Oh, well, DJ only threw for 15. Okay.
Yeah,
and yet the Giants are still 9-7-1. They're still going into the playoffs. They locked up the 6th seed. They're gonna come back to Minneapolis, and they're gonna face the same very team. But this time, you may not lose. You may not win on a 61-yard field goal, because Adoree Jackson's going to be back. McKinney's going to be back. You're going to have a healthy Saquon Barkley. You got a healthy Daniel Jones. You got a healthy wide receiver core. Granted, they're second and third stringers, but yet they put up some good numbers against a Minnesota defense that isn't very good.
It's not.
And it's not. Okay? So Minnesota can have a good offensive team, but with Adoree Jackson back, if he can limit Jefferson to X amount of yards and keep him out of the end zone, the Giants are going to win this game. If they can, if they can stop him, because quite honestly, Dalvin Cook isn't having the greatest year of his career. He's had a down year, I think. I don't think his numbers reflect those of his numbers last year. He's just not having that good of a season. I think Minnesota has been very pass happy this year because of the receivers that they have. With the addition of Hawkinson, they've gone to the pass a lot more than running the ball. But push come to shove, when the Giants' starting defenders are in place come Sunday, I think it's going to be a totally different outcome if the Giants' defense can control their passing game, stop their running game, and apply the pressure on Kirk Cousins. I'll tell you, if they can apply the pressure on Kirk Cousins, and not for nothing, Minnesota's offensive line isn't that great either.
No. In the trenches, the Giants have a better playoff formula at this time of year than Minnesota does. You need ferocious defensive line, a running game, a quarterback that can get you a first down with his legs, lower scoring. You're not going to see these shootouts. The playoffs is different. And the Giants have more playmakers on defense that can get a pick, get a strip sack. Our defense is ascending and getting better and better and better. Minnesota's defense is resting on its laurels from years past. They don't have the same bite. And although the Giants' offensive line isn't great, they have younger players on the defensive line. Or the offensive line. They have been better.
How many times has Daniel Jones been sacked in the last 3 games?
I don't think any. 0.
Fucking 0, bro.
Yeah. And Andrew Thomas, Evan Neal improving, Bredesen healthy, Gates back, the rotation.
But that's what makes Daniel Jones even more dangerous right now, is the fact that he can – I mean, he doesn't drop back all that much because he's mostly in the shotgun formation. But the fact is that he is trusting his offensive line to give him the protection that he needs to go through his progressions to allow him to throw the ball to the open receiver. Have you not noticed that? Because I've noticed that. And because he trusts the offensive line to protect him, he is going to stay in the pocket as long as he can before he knows that he has to take off. I've noticed that in the last 3 games, specifically in the last 3 games, because I think the last 3 games is where the Giants really had some good offensive game plays, specifically against Minnesota and Indianapolis.
Dude, Daniel Jones is going to be a Mustang this weekend. He's going to run. And we talked about this at the end of last year and beginning. In order for the Giants to have any success, and I thought 6 wins, Daniel Jones has to run the football. Well, they found a formula on how to run the football. Naked bootleg could be a draw play, and if Saquon's hitting those holes, he pulls one of those, he can go for a long way. What I love about Jones is his temperament. He is kind of like Eli. He's like a turbo Eli is really what he is. He has the same demeanor. Oh, shucks, everything's fine. Oh, well. And then he's an assassin. Like he's going to sniff the end zone. He's not afraid to – he can close in at the 5-yard line. He's got a long build. He's going to get in. So you obviously worry that there's no offensive firepower downfield. But you know what? If the running game is doing their job, Richie James, look, he's going to drop a few passes that'll scratch your head, but he can, he's got some speed. You're going to see him end arounds. You're going to see that. The tight end, they'll get involved. You're not going to see much from the other guys, but it's you got to respect also Kafka, how he's called the games too, taking the shots when they're there. But Saquon Barkley, this is his first playoff game. You don't think he's going to be fucking pumped? He's one of one. I mean, there are not many Saquons in the league. He's tough to bring down. And as the game goes on, he's going to wear on you, and I think the Giants have a formula to win this game. They're a live underdog. When you're +3 and you're 9-7-1 and the team you're playing against is 13-4 and you're only a 3-point dog, that essentially means it's a coin flip. They're not tipping their hand either way. It's not 4.5 where they want you to take the Giants and they love Minnesota. It's not 1 where they really like the Giants, but they want you to take Minnesota. It's a toss-up game. The Giants played them tough, and I'm telling you, look, there's a lot more pressure on Minnesota, a team that's a perennial playoff team, winning the division here and there. The Detroit Lions are not going anywhere. The Packers, we'll see. But Minnesota has some pressure to validate their record. The Giants, I mean, they got nothing to lose. They got a bunch of kids out there, hungry, young kids that just want to spoil it.
They're playing with house money.
They're playing with house money. I mean, dude, they're wait until they get cap space. Like, they're going to make some moves in the next year's draft. So, dude, they're going to be fired up and ready to go. And, dude, Thibodeau is going to be hunting. Kirk Cousins, listen, what's going to hurt the Giants is a mobile quarterback that can throw on the run and extend plays because we don't have the linebackers that can cover receivers. They don't have that. Kirk Cousins, he's not that guy. The weather's going to be colder. You're going to take a few shots. And Wink Martindale loves to blitz. And then you get McKinney back, who's a very instinctive player. He knows what the other team is doing. You get him back in the lineup as that quarterback. Are getting a lot out of Micah McFadden, another late-round pick, and some of these other no-name guys. But the defensive line is I mean, seriously, like Ojulari, Williams, Dexter Lawrence, and Thibodeau, they're as dynamic as any defensive line in football.
If they're not the best, they're definitely one of the best in the league right now. Dexter Lawrence is having a monster year.
Huge.
I mean, I mean, a lot of people are starting to finally talk about Dexter Lawrence and what he's done this year for the New York Giants, and the fact that he's now a Pro Bowler. He's had the season that he's had. He's put up the numbers that he's had. He's applied the pressure that he needs to apply, both against the pass and the run. I mean, he's done it all. I mean, Leonard Williams, granted, he's been hurt and he hasn't been on the field as much as Dexter Lawrence has been, but the two of them make one of the best interior defensive lineman combinations in all of football. And if there's a better one, if there's a better combo, I need to know about them because I don't.
Yeah, they're just as good as any tandem in the league. And you have a very young pass rushers that are hungry, that have that winning pedigree. And, Thibodeau's been a monster. And and Ojulari has had some big plays. They are going to the Giants defense is going to be salivating. They can't wait to get back out there again. Minnesota is a finesse team, passes to Jefferson, Thielen, an occasional big play. But the Giants, I feel like they're going to get home with their guys. And we got some of our coverage guys back. So the Giants have a way to win. And you wouldn't say that maybe against San Fran or other. We don't got to worry about any of that.
Yeah, exactly.
All we got to worry about
is Minnesota.
One team. And we went up and listen, in that game, you had a fumble. I think it was a Slayton or Richie James fumble that cost 3 or 7 points. Then you had the Jones interception. So without those turnovers,
it's a totally different ballgame.
The Giants could win that game. And I think they know that. I think the Giants know they can win.
There could potentially be a different outcome. Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Like Seattle, they have no chance they can win. Like Miami, they're not going to beat Buffalo. But the Giants actually coming in on the road, they know they can win. They're a dangerous underdog in this game. They're
a very confident team. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
I think they're going into this game with a lot of confidence, regardless of what happened in the final week of the season against Philadelphia, which meant really nothing. and because of the fact that a lot of the starters were sitting in that game, I don't think the Giants are even going to look back at that game as to feed off of, because they really don't need to do that. All they need to do is concentrate on Minnesota at this point. I mean, the Giants are 2-1 against Minnesota in the playoffs in the last three times they faced. They had that championship, that NFC championship win, 41-0. Then they had another win. It was a much closer game. I think it was 17-13 or 17-14, something like that. And then Minnesota beat us one time. So, I mean, the Giants have seen Minnesota in the playoffs before. And the fact that the Giants played Minnesota in the regular season gives me a little more confidence that, maybe we lost that game with that 61-yard field goal with time expiring. Maybe that won't happen again, because now, regardless of the fact that a lot of the players were missing in that game, I think they're gonna come with a game plan that's just gonna, knock Minnesota out of the.
It's a little bit colder. It's a little bit windier. Minnesota's up there. I mean, it's going to be. It's not they might have the roof up, but they might have an open roof. I don't know how it's going to be.
It's going to be pretty cold, so I don't think the roof is going to be open.
Yeah, so they're going to probably leave it closed because they need the dome to throw it around. But these finesse teams in the playoffs, they never do great. Like the 2007 Patriots, you got the Rams got beat, by a team that they lost to New England, and back in the day. I mean, these finesse teams that throw the ball and hot Sports Center highlight plays. Playoff football is different. It's ugly. It's nasty. There's, it's going to be thumping. The Giants, I think, are more well-equipped in the trenches right now to handle that side of the ball. Now, there isn't a lot of margin for error for the Giants, but they've been used to that all year. Mm-hmm. And, one thing I will say is Minnesota has heard a lot of that. So we're going to test their resolve. Is Jefferson a receiver that's going to be able to block in the postseason? Is Adam Thielen, does he have anything left? Is Dalvin Cook going to be able to have a big game? Kirk Cousins.
I'll tell you one thing. You're not going to be able to.
Terrible.
You're not going to be able to throw.
He's not been good.
You're not going to be able to throw to Jefferson 14 times. You're not going to connect with him 14 times. I don't even know how many targets they threw, towards him in that game, Christmas Eve. But he caught 14 passes, over 100 yards. Adoree Jackson's back. I don't think he's going to see 14.
McKinney's back. Yeah.
I don't think he's going to see 14 catches for over 100 yards. I mean, he'll have a good game. I'm not saying he won't, but he's not going to see 14 catches. Here are some interesting stats. I got these from the New York Giants app, NewYorkGiants.com, and I thought these were pretty interesting. So the Giants are 14-7 in the postseason games against teams they played in the regular season, including 9-7 versus teams they lost to. And these are the stats that are pretty interesting. The Giants are 0-6 in the regular season versus the NFC playoff field. 0-2 against Philadelphia, 0-2 against Dallas, 0-1 against Minnesota, 0-1 against Seattle. But they're 2-0 against AFC participants. They beat both Baltimore and Jacksonville. This is where it gets fucking even crazy. In 2011, the Giants entered the playoffs with an 0-3 record versus the conference's playoff teams. They won the Super Bowl.
That's
absurd. When I saw that, I was like, "Holy shit, that is fucking great!" I mean, 0-3 against NFC playoff participants, and they go and win the Super Bowl. That is just unbelievable. I just thought that I had to bring that up because I was like, "Holy shit!" Oh, and this is another good one. So speaking of championship season, the Giants had a -6 point differential in 2011. They scored 394, gave up 400. Guess what their differential is this year?
It's gotta be -6.
-6.
Oh my God! Someone missed a PAT to make that happen. It's
just ridiculous, man. It's mind-boggling because now it's making me think like, holy shit.
Well, the record was also 9-7 in 2011. Well, 9-7-1, so it's almost
Right. Well, that's
very
because
weird.
we were still doing a 16 game schedule back
Yep.
then, as opposed to
Yep.
17 now. So I had to bring those up because
Wild.
it's
Wild.
just fucking crazy. It's just
One thing I
crazy.
was thinking about too is that, dude, the clock ticks faster in playoff games. The Minnesota, they throw the ball. They're going to throw 30 something times.
It's gonna
That
stop the clock.
stop the clock. The Giants are going to run it. So the best case scenario is they get the ball first. They do a couple passes, maybe they get a little bit, but they punt, and that's going to be big. Then we just run it. You want the score to be 3-0 with 2 minutes left in the first quarter. If the game is going like that, you got to love our chances. What you can't have happen is you're down 14-3 after a little bit.
Yeah, the Giants aren't built.
They can't come
I
back
mean,
because
I'm not
they don't have
saying
the
they can't because
yeah,
they've done it. They've done it
they
this
have.
season. They did it against Minnesota. They were down. I don't know.
But
What were they
Daniel
down
Jones, Minnesota. Wait, against who? They
against
came back.
Minnesota?
They came back against Minnesota. They came back against Green Bay too, but it was 11 points, or maybe 10 or 11. So it wasn't. You don't want to be 2 scores down, like 2 touchdowns down, because it takes away from what Daniel Jones can do effectively to get points. Like you need him,
Yeah, without a doubt.
like available to run the football.
Without a doubt.
And you lose some of that when they're playing everybody back. You got to be careful with that. So it's just going to be so interesting. Like what's the game plan? How do the Giants come out? How does Minnesota come out? Do they play conservative and try to eat the clock and maybe soften up the Giants a little bit and then just play action? Do they immediately start throwing the screens? You're going to see a pass to Jefferson probably the first play of the game. And the first play the Giants are going to do is they're going to get the ball to Barkley, or they might do a quick pass to get him in rhythm. So it's interesting to see how it starts. But Kafka and Wink have done really well at the second half adjustment game, probably as good as anybody in the league. Because the Giants have always seemed to play better in the second half than they did in the first, especially earlier on in the year where it's like nothing happened in the first half, and then all of a sudden we got 14 more points. Like, where'd that come from?
Mm-hmm.
So the Giants have a plan to win. I got some scores in my head, what I'm thinking. So I wanted to ask you first, if you could predict, playing with house money here, so the juju is good. If the game were to end up in our favor, which I really think we could win this game, what's the score?
The Giants haven't been a team that scores a lot of points. I mean, they did it against Indianapolis, against an inferior team. And I mean, they did put up 24 points against Minnesota the first time around on Christmas Eve a couple of weeks ago. I could definitely see this game being a one-possession game again. I see it being less than a touchdown, so I can definitely see 3 or 4 point differential here in favor of the New York Giants. That's if they can contain Jefferson and they can contain Cook, and they force Kirk Cousins to make mistakes. And that's why it's so important that Thibodeau and Ojulari are going to be 100% in this game. And then you add the fact that you have Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence in the middle. I think the Giants are going to come with four-player pressure most of the day. They're going to come with, a safety blitz or a cornerback blitz or something like that just to add, more pressure on Kirk Cousins. But I guarantee you that Wink Martindale has got a plan to try to force Kirk Cousins into making mistakes. And I think that if the Giants can win the turnover game, I think the Giants come away with a 27-23 win.
I was thinking 26-23. That was because the Giants don't have like the big playability to just like get a 40-yard pass.
Right.
There's going to be field goals involved. And what I love about Dable that these other stupid fucking coaches do is like, it's 0-0. Let's go for it on fourth down. No, no. Son, take the points.
Points. Thank
Take
you.
the points, idiot. What are you doing? Stop. Like the Chargers coach, who is so overrated. Kingsbury would do it. So many coaches with the fucking visors, and they got their little play sheet, and it's like you're down by 20 points, and you're going for two. You don't have to do that. It's like you're up by 5. You want to go to 7. Okay, but like what the scenarios in which the fourth down, it's at your 37-yard line. It's 10-3. Let's go for it. No, let's not. Let's punt the ball. No, so it's 10-3. It's a nip tuck game. Kick a field goal, dude. Like it's just Dable doesn't do that crap. And Graham Gano, we're gonna do one of these because he's been money all year.
Absolutely.
Trustworthy. You got to give him a chance to get on the board. So I can see the Giants getting like 4 field goals and a couple touchdowns in a type of game like this. So 26 is my number. You have to get over like 23 or else you can't beat Minnesota. But I think Minnesota, I think they're going to get some big plays. I think Jefferson might have a highlight reel touchdown. You might have to overcome that. But I can see special teams being a big deal. Maybe a muff punt. Maybe there's an interception. Maybe there's, something that goes on. I can see a late field goal the other way. 23. That's my final.
Yeah, I can definitely see it.
It can happen.
I can definitely see it. I can definitely see it. I can definitely see the Giants winning in that manner, the same way that Minnesota won with that 61-yard field goal with time expiring back a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, I mean, I can definitely see this game going down to the wire. And that would be even more exciting for me because as long as the Giants come out winners in this game, and I'm really confident they will, I think the Giants this time around, with the players back, healthy, like Adoree Jackson and McKinney, and you have Ojulari and Thibodeau, wreaking havoc, and then you got Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence, and then everything else just needs to just come together. I just think that Wink Martindale is going to have a game plan.
He's ready
set
to
go after Kirk Cousins. He has to go after Kirk Cousins. He has to force him into making a mistake.
Oh, they can't wait to
blitz. And if he can make him make 2 mistakes, a fumble, an interception, and the Giants don't do this very often. When they do get the turnovers, they don't capitalize on those turnovers. They have to.
Yeah.
Whatever way possible, get points on the board off a turnover. They have to. You can't force a turnover, go 3, 4, 5, 6 plays, and then punt.
No.
Because that's just not helping you. You have to make them pay. And that
Would like to see Matt Breida and Brightwell get some carries as well. I know that Saquon's going to be the focal point of the offense.
Absolutely.
I want Saquon healthy enough and the juice enough to catch some screen passes, and he might have to go out and receive. Listen, you empty the tank today because you can't worry about next week.
All 3 receivers. I'm sorry. All 3 running backs are change of pace running backs.
Yeah.
I mean, you name whichever one you want. They can come in the game and be explosive, just like Saquon Barkley or Matt Breida come in and be just as explosive as Barkley is. It's a change of pace. Whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Keep Saquon Barkley fresh. Let him run, ape shit all over the fucking field in the second half if you have to.
Yeah.
But, save him for that. Save him for, whatever you need to save him for. But, yeah, I would absolutely run all 3 running backs just for a change of pace, scenario. I mean, if a player needs rest, he needs rest. If Barkley needs to get off the field after running a 30-yard sprint, get him off the field, get Breida in there, or get, Brightwell in there. It doesn't matter. Again, keep your players fresh, keep them healthy, and, let's go deep into the playoffs. But right now, all we really need to think about is the Minnesota Vikings.
You empty the tank, you get Richie James involved. I think he's been a reliable target being open. He's not going to always make the big catch. He's going to do, he might fumble. He's got his flaws, but he's very athletic. And he's a guy that you can put in motion. You could do a quick out. and you could spread the defense out a little bit. So it's going to be a chess game. I think Kafka's done a really good job with this group. Stays out of the limelight. He's not looking to do anything crazy. Daniel Jones is going to have. He's going to have to contribute in the run game. I think he's going to pick his spots.
I mean, we've spoken about Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, the offense, the defense, the players on defense. But what we really haven't focused on is the fact that this is my opinion, I feel like the Giants have the coaching edge over the Minnesota Vikings.
I do too.
Brian Daboll, first-year coach, tremendous. He's got a brain. Mike Kafka, news came out today that I think the Carolina Panthers are asking to interview him for a head coaching job.
I don't think he's going to go there, and I think
Arizona might.
Wink might have a better chance because he's a little more experienced. But you know what though? Like, can you still see me, my man?
No, I can't.
Here we go. And my son was trying to hit me up real quick. I think he just had practice. But dude, I just seeing what the adjustments are going to be. It's going to be fascinating. Dude, I mean, they have a way to do it, and I trust this coaching staff. I trust them. And it's good to know as fans you trust their coach. I think the Giants do have a coaching edge. I mean, in every big game this year, what has Minnesota done? You got blown out by Dallas. You got embarrassed by Philadelphia. You got blown out by Aaron Rodgers. They own you. They're your daddy. You're supposed to it's these close games against weak teams.
But those are the type of games that really makes me confident in saying that Minnesota's record.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't reflect the Minnesota Vikings doesn't reflect their record. I just don't think they got blown out by those teams, and they were very bad losses. I mean, Kirk Cousins totally lost in those games. The offense totally lost. Coaching totally lost.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you that if their coaches are out-coached and their team is outplayed, they're not going to win a game. They're going to get blown out. I'm not saying the Giants are going to blow them out. I think it's going to be a very close game, but the Giants have a really good coaching edge, and I think that's going to be the difference at the end of the game is who makes the best decisions on the field. I know you got to go, but let's waste the last couple of minutes talking about DJ and Saquon and the contracts they may or may not get from the New York Giants. We keep hearing that the Giants are going to negotiate in the offseason with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, right? Listen, we've been big supporters of Daniel Jones for a very long time. We may not always like what he does out on the field, but this year he's proven that he is a true New York Giants starting quarterback.
Yeah.
We want nothing more than to see Daniel Jones back in a Giants uniform in 2023. What do you think if the Giants? Well, obviously you can't franchise tag him because there are 3 tiers in the franchise tag.
Yeah.
The exclusive franchise tag, from what I'm hearing, is going to be $43 million. You cannot pay Daniel Jones $43 million. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, Daniel Jones's numbers are a sample size compared to some of the elite quarterbacks in this league.
Yep.
And I'm sorry you cannot pay him $43 million. Now, I don't know what the other 2 structures in the tags are, but one is like 30 plus million, I think 30 or 33 million. The other one I think is much lower than that, but it gives teams it allows the player to go and get offers from other teams and then bring back to the Giants to see if they want to match. I forget what the hell they called them, but either which way, Saquon Barkley obviously is going to be the more affordable player because obviously it's not going to take $43 million on a franchise tag to sign him. I think it's going to be like, what, $16 million, something like that?
Around.
Somewhere in that vicinity. So I think if it, push comes to shove, I can see the Giants franchise tagging Saquon, but I just don't see them doing it for Daniel Jones. What do you think a fair contract for Daniel Jones would be?
A lot has changed over the past 5 weeks, I think.
No
it's,
shit.
if the Giants kind of, whimpered out of the season, and we didn't beat Washington and kind of sneaked into the playoffs and maybe just missed.
Well,
Probably resign him.
before you go on, I'll say this: if Daniel Jones goes into Minneapolis this weekend and beats Minnesota, his price tag just went up.
Oh yeah. I mean, right now, I think you're looking at 20s, low 30s, dude.
I would say 25 million right now. You think that would be fair?
I think that's his fair value. You're always going to get more for fair value, and the agent's going to want more because other quarterbacks are. I'm telling you right now, we win this game in Minnesota, it's over 30. The conversation doesn't start.
Right.
And it's going to be 3 or 4 years. Now, with NFL deals, there's ways to get out of it, but he's going to be guaranteed. Deshaun Watson, unfortunately, he's not going to get Lamar Jackson money, but you win a playoff game, he's getting $34 million. I think it's going to be 4 years, $125 million, $130 million. And I'm sure you'll be, if God forbid something happens, we're thinking in the future, you probably get out, but he's going to be $35 million. I think that's a reasonable number. Even if the game is close, they lose last heartbreak and the last, that would suck. You're still going to get over 30. I think he's guaranteed over 30 with what he's done this year. Now, you're going to have to bring in receivers. You're going to go to the draft, bring in some veterans. Brandon Cooks, you might want to bring him in. Keenan Allen, you might want to draft one. And they'll make
I'd
that
stay
work.
away from players like Keenan Allen. The guy is hurt every year.
But he might be cheaper.
Don't get me wrong. He's talented. But the fucking guy is hurt every year. I have him on my fantasy team every fucking year, and he's sitting out half the season. You're fucking no good, man.
So with the angle, I was thinking of a cheaper veteran, not like a premier, like Galladay money. Hopefully that never happens again. But you're going to go through the draft. We'll bring in other players, but Jones is going to be it's going to be $35 million. $30 million if we don't win, he doesn't play well. But if he plays a great game, which I think he will, he's going to get $35 million. And then, Saquon, I think you have to franchise him. He's a running back, and he's going to want a long-term deal, but you got him as long as you can.
You don't want the Giants do not want to get into the same situation that the Dallas Cowboys are with Ezekiel Elliott, where you're going to pay him a long-term contract for the years he's already played. Meanwhile, he's no longer the talent that he once was. That's where, a running back really – you really got to think about paying a running back accordingly. You can't pay him for the years he's played. But you also
want to reward him and not – because he's been such a good guy. Maybe they could do a 3-year deal with him at $16 million a year. He could probably make more in the open market, but, I think that he wants to stay, and, we'll see. He's going to stay a New York Giant. Franchise tag puts you in a bind because once franchise tag him, then your contract has to be more. Can't go down.
Right.
And then it's tough with the cutting and all that. So I think Saquon's going to get the franchise tag. I think they're going to offer him 3 years, probably $15 million a year. You can't do 4 with a running back.
No.
He's got to stand
how old is he now?
He's 25, 26, maybe.
Okay, so I would say a 4-year deal max. I wouldn't go any further.
Yeah, and you got to get so that there's a way to cut out of it. Guarantee him the money he deserves. Joe Shane knows what he's doing, but Daniel Jones is making $35 million. If he loses, that ship has sailed. He took a team to the playoffs. He's shown enough too. He's got the stones.
So you think a 4-year deal with Daniel Jones and a 4-year deal with Saquon Barkley gets it done?
I would think so. And then if they have to franchise him, they will. And I think he'll understand that. And you might have to franchise tag somebody else. I don't know too much about their cap.
How many franchise tags does a team get?
Only one.
Oh.
So there doesn't seem to be anybody that really makes sense. Saquon to franchise, it's even worth it.
Yeah, because you can't do Daniel Jones. There's just no way.
No. So I think both are back next year. I think Daniel Jones, he's not looking to really kill the team either. But he wants to get paid, and he will. And Barkley not either. I think they're going to get the deals they want. They might overpay Saquon a little more than they overpay Daniel because Saquon, I think, has kind of carried a lot of load and been through a lot. I think they really owe it to him. And I think Daniel Jones, he doesn't strike me as the guy that's going to go to his agent and demand another year. He wants to stay here, and he knows not Josh Allen either. Like, he knows he's not putting up historic numbers that would get him $45 million. So I think as long as that range, and guarantee next year it's $40 million. But you know what? This is kind of where we think it should be. So for now, we have our focus. We have good energy this week. We say prayers. We go to church. We do right. We open the doors for old ladies. We have good energy going into the weekend. We do what we got to do.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, Jamie. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It was good talking some New York Giants football with you. We got to do this a little more often.
We bet. Let's follow up Sunday. I'll be around.
I will definitely be keeping in touch. I will definitely be keeping in touch. If anything, we'll come on and we'll talk New York Giants win.
Yeah, I have a good feeling, man. 26-23, 27-23.
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do it, baby.
All right, brother.
My brother.
I'll talk to you on Sunday. Take it easy. Peace out.